From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Donald Trump hasn't begun his second term yet. Still a month to go, but already he's talking as if he wants to increase the size of the United States with some acquisitions. He's threatening to retake the Panama Canal, which the U.S. ceded to Panama in 1999 under a treaty with that country from the 1970s. Mr. Trump also seems to want to buy Greenland, which is controlled by Denmark. And he is calling Canada the 51st American state and teasing the Prime Minister of Canada as a governor, U.S. governor. Are these serious claims that Trump is making? Is he serious? What does he want? And are we back here with a new version of Manifest Destiny? You may remember Manifest Destiny was the mid-1800s view that the U.S. was destined to and had the right to expand its territory across the continent. Is Trump now saying across the Americas too? Welcome to Potomac Watch. I'm Paul Gigot here on our Wall Street Journal Opinion podcast. And I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas and traveled safely. I'm here with Mary O'Grady, our columnist who writes about the Americas, North, Central, and South. Mary, is this what you expected from Donald Trump's second term?
Actually, Paul, I tried to brace myself for anything, but this one I really came out of the blue for me, particularly going after Panama. I mean, the Canadian rhetoric is really just provocative. Obviously, Canadians have no interest in being part of the United States, and Trump is just blowing off steam. On Panama, though, I think it's more troubling because Panama is one of our few allies in the region at this point. I mean, so many countries have fallen to the hard left, and here we have an ally that runs a going concern very well, the Panama Canal, and all of a sudden he's picking a fight with Panama, and it doesn't make much sense. I think he might at some point realize it doesn't make much sense, but he's not going to back down. He's not going to turn around and say, oh, I was wrong. So we're going to have to go through some kind of kabuki dance between Panama and the United States until he can find his way out of this one.
Well, for listeners who are as old as I am, they can probably remember the debates of the 1970s over whether or not the U.S. should cede the Panama Canal in a treaty to Panama. There was a great debate on the American right about it. Ronald Reagan said, no, don't turn it over. Bill Buckley and some others, William F. Buckley Jr., said, well, it makes sense to do it because there's no reason we should have to control it. It can be run well enough by Panama. And Jimmy Carter managed to negotiate a treaty, and it passed the Senate, ratified by the Senate, 68-32, which is only one vote above the two-thirds majority needed. And pretty much it's been not a huge issue ever since. Let's listen to Trump talking last weekend about how he sees the canal now.
You got to treat us fairly, and they haven't treated us fairly. If the principles, both moral and legal, of this magnanimous gesture of giving are not followed, then we will demand that the Panama Canal be returned to the United States of America in full, quickly, and without question. I'm not going to stand for it. So to the officials of Panama, please be guided accordingly.
The Panamanian president, Jose Raul Molino, quickly said, we have no intention of turning the canal over, and said Panama would defend its interests, and to which Donald Trump replied on Truth Social, we'll see about that. That sounds like a threat, Mary. What do you think? First of all, does Trump have a fair complaint about the fees?
I think he does not. And I'll start with the fact that all ships and vessels, no matter the flag they fly, pay the same fees. And those are based on tonnage and type of vessel. They have nothing to do with singling out the Americans to gouge them. The one problem he may be hearing about from shippers is that the drought, which was an El Nino drought, which went from June of 2023 until about the middle of this year, caused the big lake, Gatun Lake, to go down in volume. And that meant there was less water and they could bring fewer ships through the canal. So they ended up creating something they called the Express Pass, which was an online bidding system. For ships that wanted to go faster through the canal, they could pay more. And other ones who didn't want to pay that would have to wait longer. And obviously, that made a lot of shippers unhappy. But it also wasn't good for the canal. They lost an estimated $1 billion in revenue during that time. So they have no incentive to, slow down the ships or raise the prices because they give up their own interests as well. But that was just a reality of nature. They also have to run the canal, which means not only keeping it maintained all the time, but they have to also put investments into it, capital expenditures. And one of the strategies they're thinking about is building new reservoirs to deal with this uncertainty of water supply. And if they do that, it's going to cost them probably more than $2 billion. So again, the Canal Authority is run like a business, and it's an autonomous institution, and they have to care about their bottom line. So this idea that they're somehow able to gouge Americans with no regard to the outcomes is just blatantly false.
Trump also suggested in a Truth Social post, I guess, that the U.S. is somehow investing billions of dollars in this. Is that true?
No, it's not true. The Canal Authority has to basically run out of its revenue, not just regular maintenance, but also expenditure. So the third set of locks, which started in 2016, was completely done by the Canal Authority. And they issued bonds, which were backed by the Panamanian government, but they were Canal Authority bonds. And so they did the whole thing on their own to create those set of 3 new locks. It is true that the United States widened the canal before the handover. They put money into widening the canal.
That was in 1999 was the handover.
Right. So it was before that it was widened. But since it's been handed over, the Panama Canal Authority has been the only one responsible for maintaining and investing in the canal.
If the fees aren't a problem, if management here has been run more or less like a business, although it does kick any excess profits to the government of Panama, there's some suggestion that Trump is worried about China and its influence there in the canal. Of course, China is expanding its influence throughout the Americas, Latin America in particular. And Trump suggested that Chinese soldiers are helping to operate this. It's the first I've heard of that.
Again, not true. And actually, the Panamanian president answered that on either Christmas Day or the day after Christmas, saying that there are no Chinese soldiers in the canal zone. There are 5 cargo ports, and 2 of them are run by a subsidiary of Hutchison Whampoa, which is a Hong Kong company traded on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. The other 3 ports are run by U.S., Taiwanese, and Singaporean commercial interests. But there are no soldiers in the canal zone from China.
Is China? What about overall Chinese influence? When Hutchison Whampoa is a Hong Kong-based company, it used to be an old British trading company and now local. I believe the shareholders are Chinese, Hong Kong Chinese. And Hong Kong does answer now to China. How much should we be worried about that?
Well, I think it's something we definitely have to keep an eye on because, as you say, the influence of Beijing over Hong Kong and the so-called private sector in Hong Kong is something to worry about. But what I look at that problem and I think, okay, if that is a threat, what Trump should want to do is bring the Panamanian government closer to him and try to work with them to ensure security in the canal. Instead, he's alienating a center-right government, and Venezuela is sticking up for Panama right now. So I don't even understand the chess game. I mean, if he's trying to outsmart them, he's not doing a very good job.
Well, so that's an important point, which is the bullying here plays into the old El Norte gringo imperialist, and the left in Latin America will make a lot of hay out of this. But what's the goal here? I mean, does Trump want to renegotiate the treaty? If he does, of course, he'd have to resubmit it to the U.S. Senate. Does he want to lean on Panama to be able to make sure that it gets rid of those 2 Hutchison Whampoa concessions? And how is he going to do that if Panamanians say, well, you can't bully us, we're not going to cooperate? Then what's his leverage?
Well, I'm suspecting that someone complained to him about the price of getting through the canal. And he took that complaint and he decided to tweet about it and complain about it to the public. What I suspect will happen here is that he will say that he forced a negotiation, not unlike what he did with Mexico in the North American Free Trade Agreement. In the end, what he renegotiated with Mexico was very, very similar to the North American Free Trade Agreement, but he declared victory and went home. So if he forces Panama to make some concession, who knows what it is, he will say that he won.
But I'd have to get that through the U.S. Senate, Mary, if it's renegotiated in substantial form.
I don't know if he'll try to renegotiate the treaty or if he'll just try to extract some goodie from Panama and then be able to say that he won. But I tell you, the Panamanians are really digging in their heels. I mean, I secretly think that Donald Trump is working for Jose Raul Mulino because
the president of Panama.
Yes, because the whole country is rallying around him and supporting him in this. You know, there's been a lot of resentment in Panama over the years about the canal zone because people lived much more privileged lifestyles inside the canal zone, and outside of the canal zone there was quite a bit of poverty. That was a long time ago, and the suspicions that Panama was not up to running the canal have been completely unfounded because they've done such a good job of not only running what they were given, but also improving on it. It's very transparent and really has an independent institutional framework that makes it work for the country and for the world.
Trump this week named his choice for ambassador to Panama. He's a Miami-Dade County Commissioner, Kevin Marino Cabrera. Do you know anything about him, Mary?
Well, the one thing I know about him was that he was an important member of the Trump reelection campaign in 2020 for Florida.
For 2024 or 2020?
No, in 2020.
2020.
Yeah. Other than that, he has no diplomatic experience. He has some experience in international trade for the Miami-Dade County Commission, but I think that he's also very young. He's in his mid-30s. So I think the main role that he will play, as the Panamanians are joking now, is that he will be the Trump ambassador to Panama, not the U.S. ambassador to Panama.
All right, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about Donald Trump's desire to make Greenland part of the United States when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot here on Potomac Watch, and we're talking about Donald Trump's new manifest destiny of the United States with Mary O'Grady. Let's turn as well to Greenland, the world's largest island in the North Atlantic. It is part of Denmark, but Denmark has allowed the people of Greenland to pursue self-determination with a goal of independence if they choose so. But Trump seems to covet it. He mentioned it in his first term. He likes the idea of maybe somehow adding to the territory of the United States, a la the Alaska Purchase way back when. And obviously, it would have to be done with the approval of the people of Greenland. But there may be an avenue here that makes some sense, short of an occupation, because if the Greenland people pursued some kind of self-determination or independence from Denmark, they wouldn't be able to defend themselves against Russian or Chinese advances. And of course, the Arctic is becoming much more of a contested area, with Russia in particular expanding in the Arctic and the pursuit of minerals, exploiting minerals. And as Greenland has warmed, along with some parts of the North Atlantic, it would make sense for Greenland to seek some kind of accommodation, perhaps, with the U.S. for defense and development of its mineral deposits. And Alexander Gray, who was a White House Security Council official in the first Trump term, wrote in our pages not too long ago that one path here would be allowing Greenland to preserve its sovereignty, but signing something called a Compact of Free Association with the United States, along the lines that Micronesia and Palau and the Marshall Islands have in the Pacific. Kind of an interesting idea, Mary.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why the way that Trump is going about this is so offensive is he's out there sort of blustering about how, we're going to take Greenland. And it really has to start with the self-determination of the people of Greenland. Mm-hmm. And so that's what he should be talking about, explaining why it would be a good deal for them and how he would go about getting it in a peaceful manner. I do think that I take your point about the Arctic. I've been writing about the Northwest Passage for years, and every time I write about it, I'm noticing that it's melting more and there's more ships passing through there. And it's one reason why the Canadians really need to think more about national defense than they do, because they don't have the defense of the ice that they used to have. But if he were going to do this, this would be not only bigger than Seward's Folly, the purchase of Alaska, but also the Louisiana purchase. Greenland would be bigger than the land mass that the U.S. got when it bought Louisiana. So just from a strategic point of view, I can see why he's interested in it. But this is a matter for the people of Greenland to decide, and he's got to make a deal sweet enough for them to want it.
Right. The implication is we're going to go in there and get it if you don't oblige. That may not be the most persuasive argument for the people of Greenland.